Hi, hello. My name is Emily Krugh, and today I'm going to be presenting my capstone project with you. It is called Exploring Urban Native American Identity Through Tommy Orange's There. So, throughout history, Indigenous people have suffered great trauma as a result of forced migration and colonization. And this historical trauma is often overlooked due to a lack of knowledge, understanding, as well as the unwillingness for Americans to accept responsibility for these acts. So, this impact of this trauma on today's urban Native American communities is still widespread. And this is still something that we are still unaware of the lasting effects of every facet of what happened as a result of this forced migration and colonization on the urban Native American community. So, in his debut novel, Tommy Orange explores the impact of this historical trauma on a group of urban Native Americans that are residing in Oakland, California. And he does this by creating and introducing characters that are complex and Native American and urban. And he does this in a way that really allows the readers to connect to them and see how multifaceted they are as an entire group of people. So before I continue, I wanted to give you a little bit of background information on the author of There, Tommy Orange. So Orange himself was born and raised in Oakland, California. He is an enrolled member of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma. Orange received his MFA from the Institute for American Indian Arts, where he now teaches. And his debut novel, There, was the recipient of the 2019 American Book Awards. And I think it's also just a pretty fun fact that Obama actually named There as one of his favorite books of 2018. So that's kind of a big deal. And There was also on the New York Times bestseller list. So through the characters in There, Orange challenges his readers to view Native Americans as unique and nuanced individuals instead of simply seeing them as one large entity and labeling them survivors. So the novel illuminates the struggle for Native Americans to find an identity after their ancestors suffered such a loss. Through the dynamic characters in the novel, Orange explores the themes of identity and storytelling. And both of these themes are seen through the lens of historical trauma that has impeded Native Americans from creating a personal identity that's separate from their past. So in There, Orange creates an opening for an honest conversation by allowing readers to view urban Native Americans close up as they struggle to form these healthy identities. When describing the effects of historical trauma on today's urban Native American community, Carol Markstrom explains in her article, Identity Formation of American Indian Adolescents, that traumatic and destabilizing actions, including forced displacement, loss of traditional means of livelihood, and the erosion of viable cultural values and practices undermine emotional supportive cultures and social systems so foundational in healthy identity formation. So while it would have been easier for Orange to only show the struggle of urban Native Americans, he chose to create characters that allow the reader to see both the beauty and the heartache within the Native American community. And he shows the readers how these characters are working to form a healthy identity. So we get to kind of watch as they struggle to figure out who they are within the confines of having this historical trauma that they carry with them at all times. I believe that showing the good and the bad side of urban Native American life is what sets There apart as an important piece of literature in today's social climate. So, in an interview, Orange offers the following explanation. He states, quote, "There's a dehumanization that's happened with Native people because of all of these misperceptions about what we are, and it's convenient to think of us as gone or drunks or dumb. It's convenient to not have to think about a brutal history and a people surviving and still being alive and well today, thriving in various different forms of life, good and bad." So it's through these characters in the novel that the reader is able to gain a better and fuller picture of what it feels like to be a part of today's urban Native American community. So what you see on this slide is a painting by the artist Lauren Crazy Bowl. So she created portraits for 5 of the characters in Orange's book. They're there. So throughout my presentation, you'll likely notice that I've incorporated Native American art. And I was careful to choose art and artists that depict Native Americans in a more complex, modern, and contemporary setting. And that's because I believe that's something that Tommy Orange was trying to do within the novel They're There. So I tried to choose artists that depicted Native Americans in a non-stereotypical light. So, one of the characters in the novel that is very complex is by the name of Edwin Black. So, Edwin is a biracial young man who never knew his Native American father and lives with his white mother. So, throughout the novel, we watch as Edwin attempts to unearth his cultural identity by reaching out to his Native American father to learn about his heritage. So, Edwin has a master's degree in Native American literature and he aspires to be a writer. However, he has little knowledge of his own personal Native American cultural history. So, through Edwin, we kind of see the struggle to form a healthy identity. So, he can read all of the books, he can understand the literature, but he doesn't have that personal connection to his history. And this is what troubles him and leads him to feeling really directionless after he graduates. So again, he is very intelligent. He is very ambitious. However, he becomes really depressed and he retreats from the world. In fact, he becomes kind of dependent on this internet Second Life persona that he creates for himself. And it's like a game that he plays online. And in it, there's a quote that he says in the novel. He says, "The Edwin Black in there on the internet had a job and a girlfriend, and his mom had died tragically during childbirth. That Edwin Black was raised on the reservation with his dad. The Edwin Black of my second life was proud. He had hope." So through Edwin Black, Orange shows the innate desire that many Indigenous people have to explore their cultural identity. So, however, since so much of that cultural identity has been lost as a result of, assimilation and forced colonization, and just the need to survive, there's a great loss of this cultural identity. And this lack of cultural identification within the Indigenous community keeps bright and ambitious individuals like Edwin Black from reaching their full potential. So in the article, Indigenous People in a Multicultural Society, H.N. Weaver explains this a little bit better. She states that an individual who does not have citizenship in an Indian nation may struggle with his or her sense of identity and self-esteem. It may imply that an individual's place in the community is unclear, if that individual is accepted at all. So in many ways, a contrast to the character of Edwin Black in the novel is the character Calvin Johnson. So in the novel, Calvin is depicted as a young Native American man who is lacking ambition or education. He lives with his sister in order to save money because he spent all of his own on drugs and other less savory activities. Both of his parents are out of the picture. His mother has passed away and his father left when he was young. His brother is a drug dealer, which is how Calvin kind of gets involved in this lifestyle. However, what Calvin lacks in education and motivation, he seems to have found in a sense of community and belonging within this Native American culture. So, in the novel, Calvin explains himself. He states, "I'm just living here until I can save enough money. But I like being around my sister and her daughter. It's like being back at home, home like we can't have it anymore." So, although home isn't ideal for Calvin and his family, the circumstances, they're living paycheck to paycheck. They are paying their bills through dealing drugs. Even though things aren't ideal at home, Calvin still feels an attachment to this community. And this is a sentiment shared by many urban Native Americans who feel a sense of identity within the Native American community. So, if we look at it from that perspective, in many ways, Calvin has a more healthy identity than Edwin Black. In the article, Unraveling Cultural Threads, Laura House writes that recognizing oneself as a part of the community and valuing the community over oneself is viewed as important to American Indian and tribal ethnic identity. So, this connection of community is not always easily found, in particular in an urban setting. So, although Calvin might not always agree with what his family does, or, in the novel, he's kind of depicted as being conflicted about how they are paying their bills through dealing drugs, he still feels a very strong sense of obligation to his family. And in part, that's because it's this connection to his culture, and it gives him this sense of value. So, in addition to exploring the themes of family and identity, Orange uses storytelling in the novel to connect the dots between each of the characters. And he really emphasizes the importance of storytelling within the Native American community. So, the characters in the novel use storytelling as a way to stay connected to their Native American heritage. So even if their current living situation feels stagnant or hopeless, they can still tell their story. They can still stay connected to their past through this storytelling. So, although many of the young characters in the novel express an interest to learn more about their heritage, there is this little bit of paradoxical situation in that many of today's urban Native Americans find themselves too busy trying to get by to have the luxury to explore their history or learn about their culture. So if they're living paycheck to paycheck and they don't, that means that they don't really necessarily have time to learn more about their history. And then by not telling their stories, they lose their past, they lose that connection. So, of course, this is really troubling when you consider all that was done, all of the terrible things that were done throughout history to assimilate and strip Indigenous communities of this culture. We do see that lasting effect, even within the urban Native American community. So, in a review of the novel for The Guardian, Rowan Buchanan explains that untold stories can become a wound. Perhaps to tell your own story is an attempt to heal, at least a little. But many of the characters in there are confused about how to tell their story. Knowing what you aren't is not the same as knowing what you are. So this lack of identity is especially prevalent for Native Americans within the urban community. This is because they're so spread out, and isolated. If you think about the urban setting, you don't always know who your neighbors are, and you kind of just get in your car and you go to work and you go home. So there's really not that sense of connection, especially in an urban setting. So this hiddenness is what often leads individuals to feeling isolated and depressed. Another aspect within the urban Native American community is that there's a need to assimilate to society in order to keep a job, in order to survive. So in the novel, several of the characters are trying to work through these feelings of isolation through telling their story. And so one of these examples in the novel is the character Dean Oxidine. So Dean is a young, ambitious filmmaker living in Oakland, California. And he's a member of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribe of Oklahoma, just like Tommy Orange himself. His uncle, Lucas, was also an aspiring filmmaker, but unfortunately, his uncle suffered from alcoholism, and that led to his uncle passing away. And after his death, Dean decided he wanted to also take up filmmaking, kind of as in honor of his uncle. So he received a grant, Dean did, in the novel to make a film. And in this film, he decides he wants to make a documentary about the stories of the urban Native Americans in the Oakland community. So in the grant proposal for the movie, Dean states, quote, "I want to bring something new to the vision of the Native experience. We haven't seen the urban Indian story. What we've seen is full of the kinds of stereotypes that are the reason no one is interested in the Native story in general." So Dean doesn't have a script for his film. He just wants to interview Native Americans that are in the Oakland, California area, and he wants to find out what they've lived through, find out what everyday life is like for them. So in many ways, there's a lot of similarities between the character Dean Oxidine and Tommy Orange himself. I really think that Tommy Orange saw a lot of himself in this character. He brought a lot of himself into it. And Dean's challenge mirrors a lot of what Tommy Orange is attempting to do through the novel. He is attempting to expose an audience to the multifaceted identity of urban Native Americans. He doesn't have an agenda except to show who they are, show their humanity, show the good and the bad. So in the article, A Community for the People, Tommy Orange is there. Alex Kavanaugh explains that, quote, "Through Dean, Orange makes an important intervention by representing Native life in cities and Native life everywhere on its own terms as simultaneously joyful, difficult, loving, sad, but never pathetic or weak or in need of pity," unquote. So it is through his ability to tell the story of urban Native Americans in an untethered and honest manner that Orange is able to tell the story of survival. Dean is similarly attempting to do this for his community in the novel. So, two additional characters in the novel that reveal the importance of storytelling within the urban Native American community are Opal Viola Victoria Bearshield and her half-sister, Jackie Redfeather. So both Opal and Jackie were part of the Native occupation of Alcatraz Island when they were younger. So to just kind of give you a little background on what this occupation of Alcatraz was, it was a 19-month-long protest when 89 American Indians and their supporters occupied Alcatraz Island to kind of in protest. This group lived on the island together until it was forcibly ended by the U.S. government. So while they were on the island, Jackie, who was only 18 years old at the time, was sexually assaulted. And as a result of that, she became pregnant. So after giving birth, Jackie gave that baby up for adoption. And later in life, Jackie also suffered another huge loss because her second daughter committed suicide. And all of this trauma is seen to Opal watches this happen, her older sister, and Jackie becomes an alcoholic. She becomes unable to handle it. So, in an article entitled Indigenous People in a Multicultural Society, Weaver explains that historical trauma and unresolved grief are a legacy that many Indian people struggle with today. Although discussed less frequently than the Holocaust in Europe, the genocide that took place in the Americas was no less devastating. So this trauma and unresolved grief causes Jackie to retreat. So she is sexually assaulted. She loses her second daughter to suicide. And as a result of this, Opal is forced to raise Jackie's grandson on her own because Jackie just simply cannot handle it. Now, this is where Tommy Orange is showing the not so pretty side of the historical trauma that occurs within the urban Native American community. He does not shy away from it. He does not sugarcoat it. However, he doesn't do it in a way that makes the reader feel like you should pity them. So when Opal and Jackie are younger, shortly after their mother passes away, there is a really poignant conversation that they have about the importance of telling their story in the novel. So in it, Opal says to Jackie that one of the last things her mother told her was that they shouldn't ever not tell their stories. And in response, Jackie offers the following reply. Life doesn't work out the way stories do. Mom's dead. She's not coming back and we're alone. What kind of effed up story is that? So the juxtaposition between the conversations of the two sisters, so one saying they should tell their story, one saying our story's really not great. Why would we want to tell it? This is a good way to illustrate both the positive and the negative aspects of the urban Native American story. It's full of devastation and heartache. However, in not telling these stories, there's no way that the culture is going to survive. And that is what their mother was trying to tell them in that moment. So, and they're there in the novel, storytelling becomes an act of self-preservation. It becomes a mode through which these urban Native American, within which the urban Native American communities can ensure that their ancestors' history survives, that their story survives for generations to come. And that is why it is especially powerful and important for Orange to portray young characters such as Dean Oxidine, who are interested in understanding what it's like to be Native American in today's society. So another point in the novel, when Opal is older and she is watching her sister's grandson, he complains to her that he doesn't know anything about what it means to be Indian. I think he's about 12 years old at the time. And she replies to him, don't ever let anyone tell you what it means, what being Indian means. Too many of us died to get just a little bit of us here, right now, right in this kitchen. You, me, every part of our people that made it is precious. You're Indian because you're Indian because you're Indian. So when it comes to telling the stories of Native Americans, there is a lot of sugarcoating. And Rowan Buchanan explains that, quote, too many have been taught their history by saccharine Thanksgiving Day parades and cowboy movies in which Native Americans are acted by an Italian guy named Iron Eyes Cody. When they appear, Orange's characters look nothing like their Hollywood avatars. They live in Oakland, ride bikes, and drive postal vans. So Orange doesn't, make his characters into these stereotypes that so many Americans are used to seeing. He creates characters that are both complex yet ordinary. They're capable of experiencing love and joy and sadness and pain. And he does this in a way that allows you to really connect with the characters as people. And that's really important. Just to elaborate on that point, Kavanaugh explains in an article that Orange's portrayal of the Oakland Native American community, while not shying away from the frequently harsh realities of Native life in the United States, does not make a totality out of the harshness. All of Orange's characters are in some way marked by trauma, but are defined by love and resilience. So I think that is what's so important, because Orange doesn't just say, "Oh, these horrible things happened, and it's because of these horrible historical trauma within the community." He shows these characters that are pushing to have a better life. So, in conclusion, They're There as a novel is a triumph because of its ability to show urban Native American characters in a way that doesn't overinflate them to match the typical stereotypes. They're not mythical, single minded individuals, nor are they depicted as simply down on their luck or washed out as a result of the historical trauma that their ancestors have been through. So, and They're There, Orange offers the readers the opportunity, he offers his readers an opportunity to see an array of complicated humans who are also Native American. He does this all while zooming in his lens on the historical trauma that's helped shape who they are. So thank you so much for allowing me to present this to you. I will show you, this is my works cited. And if you have any questions or comments, I very much look forward to hearing them. Thanks so much.